All right, so we want to welcome you guys all to our It's Worth a Shot. As you can see by the title slide, this is episode 100. So we want to really thank you very much for participating with us all these Wednesdays. Our first episode was actually January 19th of 2022. So you guys have stuck it out for the long haul, so we appreciate that. And then we have a presenter back, a blast from our past. So I'll introduce her at a later time here coming up to present, so it'll be exciting. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, Mary. And as always, we just want to have our little disclaimer that sometimes we have third-party presenters on here, and that doesn't mean that Mountain Pacific endorses or recommends what they're presenting, but we do, support them as being speakers on this webinar. Next slide. Okay, we've got a couple reminders here for everybody. So I want to start off with this NHSN series flyer. So when planning for It's Worth a Shot, we decided to every fourth Wednesday of It's Worth a Shot for the next couple months, we're going to have a specific series within It's Worth a Shot that has to deal with NHSN. And on this next slide, you'll see the flyer and the link to, kind of get a little bit more information on it. But we just wanted to bring that to your attention. Also, we've had some questions so far, but the updated version of the patient safety component manual summary was updated in January, and we put the link in there because I know some people were looking at it, looking for it at the beginning of the year. It hadn't quite been updated yet. And then also wanted to bring attention that the annual facility survey is due March 1st, 2024. So we have a link in there and also the instructions. And if you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us. And then also wanted to bring your attention to the fact that there is an up-to-date SBAR tool. And as it says on the slide there, it's a great placement for, to have it at the nursing station. And you can find it either on our website or access it through the QIO programs website. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And as I said earlier, here is the flyer for the kind of series within a series for us. So as you can see, the sessions there on January 24th, February 28th, March 27th, April 24th, and May 22nd. You might see a little bit more activity than usual with our normal nursing homes that are on the call with us and other officials that join us, because we are going to promote this to a couple more outside groups. So just to give you guys a heads up for that. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that these presentations are recorded and that we do share them out and they get posted to our website. We again want to thank you very much for joining us all this time and continue to appreciate if you chat in topics for us to cover, or when you complete the assessment or the evaluation at the end of the presentation, we appreciate if you write those in there as well. So thank you for that. Next slide. All right, so I'm sure you guys are all fully aware that the flu is on the rise across the nation. Alaska and Hawaii are kind of holding our own with it's not so bad for us yet, but I'm sure it's coming. So just everybody be aware. As you can see by all the trends, there's definitely increase across all of the notable metrics. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, weekly COVID snapshot. Again, that is increasing as well. And I'm sure you guys have heard and seen and experienced the increase of COVID hospitalizations as well as outbreaks in the facilities. So again, if you guys need any help or want any information, definitely reach out to us. Next slide, please. So we just want to give you guys a little bit of a snapshot of all of the information and the data that we have gathered throughout our 100 episodes of It's Worth a Shot. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And again, we want to stress that this couldn't be made possible without you guys attending every week. And we really so much appreciate your guys' engagement in this. So at a glance, obviously, we're on our 100th episode right now. So we have currently had 99 It's Worth a Shot, so 99 episodes. We have covered 172 topics because, as you can recall, sometimes we do have 2 topics per webinar. Sometimes it's just 1. We did want to bring your attention to the fact that outside presenters presented 63 times. So that 63 topics were covered by outside presenters and 109 topics were covered by Mountain Pacific employees. And then for the individual unique, that seems a little weird, but we just wanted to say that we do have a lot of repeat presenters and we very much appreciate them. But if you wanted to look at it as unique presenters, we've had 72 individual presenters that obviously some of them presented more than once. 24 of those were outside presenters and 48 were internal. So the fact that a quarter of our presenters, half of our presenters are outside presenters, I couldn't begin to thank you guys enough for your participation. And then looking at our total participants, so over our 100 episodes, or 99 episodes, we've had 5,879 people join the webinars, so as a total. And we have gotten a lot of kudos for this series because we have such a high rate of attendance for this. And as you can see, our average participants is almost 60 people per presentation. We had a high of 87 and our lowest number of participants are 37. And talking to some of the other Quinn QIOs, they would die to have this many people participate in some of their webinars. So again, we can only thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your presentation. And then our participation, I'm getting these words confused, obviously. And then as for the evaluations that we ask you to complete after each It's Worth a Shot, we have had a total of 708 evaluations completed. We average a 4.75 out of 5 satisfaction with our speakers, which, that's great. The presentation skills is ranked at 4.72. The ability of our speakers to engage the audience is at a 4.66. And the value of our information shared or topics presented has a score of 4.64. So again, we just really want to thank you for sticking through this with us. It was originally, we thought was only going to be 13 weeks, so 13 episodes, but then we were engaged to keep going with this. So you guys have made it very successful for us and we cannot thank you enough. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
Hey, Miranda.
Yes.
There's a couple questions in chat. Joyce is looking for a source for the national maps on COVID.
Oh, sure. Yes. So that is actually on the slide at the bottom. We will open it up and then pop it in the chat for you, but they come through CDC. Both of them are from the CDC website.
And then there's another question, if anybody has been able to tell if the vaccine is a good match for the strains this year.
Do we have any of our vaccines? Actually, our next speaker can probably talk to that. So let's go ahead and save that for her. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, we want to welcome back Jessie Kenzie. If you guys have been with us from the beginning, you'll know that she actually originally helped start this with us when she was at Mountain Pacific. She is now transferred over to PharmAmerica. And we do want to acknowledge that today is Jessie's birthday and she was still willing to participate with us, for our 100th episode, which we really appreciate. And I will go ahead and hand this over to Jessie and see if she can answer that question in chat for us. Jessie, here's the bus. Let it run you over. Welcome back.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. Yes, today is my birthday. You guys are so sweet to put that on there. I couldn't, it's a work day for me, and what a blessing to celebrate the 100th episode with you guys and my birthday with such a wonderful group. So thank you guys again for having me back on. I thought I'd kind of go over some highlights and some topics that we have coming our way as far as a long-term care pharmacy provider, and maybe help answer some of those questions for you guys about vaccine storage and general expiration reminders for vaccines. And I think I did understand a question. Someone was inquiring about if the flu vaccine was a good match to this year's circulating virus. And, I think we are still kind of early in our flu season to see that data collectively, but I can connect with Kyla on the Mount Pacific team, the pharmacist, and we'll see if there's anything that's been produced yet, but usually we don't see any of those statistics until a little bit later. But that's a really good question, whoever asked that.
Hey, Jessie, this is Kyla.
There's Kyla.
Yeah, hi. So there was some data that came out a couple months ago about the Southern Hemisphere, And it did show a significant reduction in hospitalizations in folks that had received the vaccine. So that's what we know so far. And then some folks, some experts are saying, yes, it's a good match. And we can certainly look and see if we can find some more detailed data on that. I have not seen it yet, but we can put that in the Q&A for next week as well.
Thanks. Thanks, Kyla. Yeah, we usually look to what transpired in the Southern Hemisphere as to what our flu season will look like. So we'll keep an eye out for that statistic and data and be sure to share it forward. Good question. So next slide. So I would kind of be remiss if I didn't at least touch upon the vaccine cold chain and kind of how that flows as we talk about vaccine storage and kind of reminders. So, as you can see, the importance of storage from the time the vaccine leaves the manufacturer to the time that you actually administer the vaccine in the individual's arm is critical. It's important. Proper vaccine storage and handling. It can kind of go two ways. If there's any interruptions in that chain, then it could directly impact the potency of the vaccine. So how our orders are received, how our pharmacy deliveries are put away in a timely manner, that could potentially impact our potency of our vaccine. And if there's any exposure to an improper kind of storage condition for those vaccines, it could permanently affect our vaccines. And when you look at this graphic, it's just a good reminder that how are you storing your vaccines in your facilities and your communities and your centers? Are you using the right refrigerator? Is your fridge temp properly monitored? Because any of those objectives could certainly impact that cold chain flow and storage and handling of those vaccines. Ultimately, vaccines, they need to be stored properly from the time, again, they come from the manufacturer until they're administered. And I think we probably all can kind of reflect at this, and those vaccines have to go through quite a few hands until we get them into arms. So it's a nice time to reflect and make sure that we have good, steady policies in place and processes, and that everyone's reminded of those. So next slide, please. So as we kind of look at some highlights around best practices for vaccine storage and handling, it's always an important point to make sure that we're providing staff education, annual refresher training for staff, and reviewing those processes again for how we are handling vaccine in our community. And I do have a really nice checklist. I'm going to copy it and drop it in chat for you guys right now. Let's see. I think it went through. So immunize.org just updated this last week, January 3rd, actually, and they put together a really nice tool checklist reminder that you can use to help support annual refresher training for your staff in the facility. When you're looking at staff education, we want to make sure that we have a conversation of, if you do identify there's been a temperature excursion, maybe you have a refrigerator that's frozen out or no longer holding the temperature, how do you respond to those excursions? And is everyone aware of that process? Most pharmacy policies and procedures, you're going to see a chapter in there around medication storage in your facility. You're going to want to make sure that everyone's aware of where to find that policy and procedure. And again, in the event there's an excursion, what does that need to look like in order to respond? Reliable storage. It's always a good conversation to kind of review what kind of refrigerator units do you have in your facility? Do you have the dorm fridges, or do you have dedicated vaccine fridges that were really intended to store medications and vaccines? there's a great conversation you can go into as far as looking at those types of storage units and what's appropriate and what's not. I know typically we do tend to have those dorm type fridges. And I would say most people will say they've experienced struggles keeping the temperatures consistent in those units. So great conversation to have in QA and maybe review, do you have the appropriate units to store vaccine, especially when you look at, again, viability of the vaccine, cost of the vaccine, and we look at that cold chain. So we need to maintain that potency until we're ready to administer the vaccine. Routine temperature monitoring, this is a big one. We want to make sure that we're reviewing this practice and discussing with our staff. And oftentimes, this is one of those hot topics that we're auditing. When vaccines are present, are we checking that temperature twice a day in those refrigerators? And again, how are we responding to those excursions? Process for vaccine inventory management. This is one that, as we've kind of seen an uptick in having to manage more and more vaccines in our long-term care communities, that it's clearly a conversation that we probably need to be hosting more to make sure that we're all on the same page. If you're expecting maybe a delivery on a Thursday night, but your infection preventionist isn't there until Monday, does the rest of the staff know where that vaccine needs to go and be stored? Is it stored in a location that the temperature is being monitored accurately? I've been helping a few folks that unfortunately deliveries come in and they're storing it in the closest fridge, but maybe there was no thermometer in that fridge. So then we run into some temperature monitoring concerns. So again, a process to, when's your vaccine coming in? Do the staff know where to put it? Do we have accurate monitoring in place? And is everyone kind of on the same page for that? And then reliable temperature monitoring equipment. We kind of see a wide array of different thermometers and probes and various types of equipment throughout buildings. And so that kind of brings me to the next slide. So as far as temperature monitoring, we often see where we really don't have the right temperature monitoring equipment. Most equipment that maybe have been purchased from a local hardware store is not really the appropriate equipment. They weren't really designed to monitor temperatures for vaccine storage. Maybe they were designed more for household food storage. And that type of equipment seemed to trickle into some of our homes. So, when we look at that equipment, they may not necessarily have been designed to be calibrated or they're accurate enough to monitor the temperatures where vaccines are stored. So that brings me to kind of a new, maybe it's not new age, but I think it's kind of new age, thinking around smart thermometers. And I bring this up and I share this with a little bit of excitement to all the attendees on the call today, is the potential of smart thermometers. When you look at it and you look at record keeping and staff time and difficulty maybe maintaining those paper logs that are taped to the front of all our refrigerators twice a day because now we have vaccine in that fridge, and auditing because we got cited on it. Smart thermometers, I think, are something that we could really potentially be looking at and how that can help us in our workflow in our long-term care communities. And these smart thermometers, if you get on Google or Amazon, there is a variety. I really don't have a name brand to endorse and share forward. But what you want to do is look for those that have the device that attach in the refrigerator, and then they connect with an app that you can upload on your house phone or your nurse manager's phone that they carry. And through that app, you can actually remotely monitor the temperatures of your refrigerators. You can generate automatic temperature recording. So instead of the time the staff has to go through the facility, record, monitor, look to see if there's any excursions, that's all being captured within this application. If survey walks in, you can actually go through these apps, generate a report and hand it over versus worrying about going around and collecting. You can also, through some of these apps, get instant text alerts if there is an excursion. So I bring this forward because I thought, gosh, for our communities, what a huge time saver, a way to maintain compliance and reduce our risk for survey, prevent vaccine loss, which, as we all know, is into the thousands of dollars, and protect the potency of those vaccines, that cold chain storage that we talked about when we introduced this session. So, again, you can Google these, work with your local consultant pharmacist. This might be kind of a neat little QA project to invite your consultant pharmacist in alongside your IP in QAPI. Again, there's various different smart thermometers out there, but the capabilities are definitely there, and they can be a huge benefit to your community. And let's see here, next slide. So with that, just a few kind of highlights for vaccine storage reminders. Again, when vaccines are present, it's twice a day. And I know, we've kind of, in some communities, because we've seen more vaccine, we've gotten in that habit just to automatically do it twice a day. But, some locations in our buildings, maybe we've never stored vaccine in that fridge, so we didn't get in the habit of doing twice a day. Just a good reminder, vaccines are present. You need to do twice a day temp monitoring per the CDC. Review those processes for receiving your vaccines. Make sure if you are utilizing any kind of multi-dose vials, any of your vaccines coming in a multi-dose vial, that those are properly dated when they're first accessed. Take some time and review your storage units, your refrigerators. Make sure that there's enough space internally and externally. So if those dorm fridges are pretty snug in the cabinets there, make sure that there's some room to breathe. Otherwise, those fridges, they tend to overheat, as I think some of us probably on the line have experienced. You want to look below too on the vent on the bottom of those refrigerators. Is it clean, or is it maybe full of dust? That'll also impact how that temperature is cool, or how that refrigerator is cooling. Is the fridge stuffed? Is it packed full of everything? That may be an indication you need to get a larger unit or an additional unit, because if it's too full, that's going to impact your temperature as well. Vaccines should not be stored indoors, and they should not be stored in a fridge without temperature monitoring. Next slide, please. Again, a few highlights, reminders as we see more and more accountability to your facilities to be storing COVID-19 vaccines. The updated Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, once it hits your fridge, it's only good for 10 weeks. Once it's been accessed, if you have a multi-dose vial, it's only good for 12 hours. The Moderna, it's good for up to 30 days in your fridge. And once accessed only at room temperature there, it's only good for 24 hours. The Novavax, it's actually good for up to 9 months. So a little bit different there when you start to look at storage. But then after first puncture, it's only good for 12 hours. Next slide, please. I tossed in a few highlights for some additional vaccines that I know we're seeing more and more of. So RSV vaccine. This vaccine, once you have reconstituted it, it is only good for 4 hours. the top one here, that RXV. The second RSV vaccine, the Pfizer one, after reconstitution, interestingly enough, for this this RSV vaccine type, it can only be stored at room temperature, and then it's good for 4 hours after reconstitution. And I know the Mount Pacific team will share these slides out after the presentation so you can cross-reference some of this information. But it was just trying to share forward that, gosh, we have a lot of variants as far as what expires when, how long is it good for, and it's kind of nice to have that all in one place to help share forward. Next slide, please. So when we look at the Shingrix vaccine, kind of similar there. You want to make sure that that vaccine is stored properly. And once you reconstitute that vaccine, it's only good for 6 hours. So next slide, please. Flu vaccine, now we have a lot of that floating around these days. The multi-dose vials that are available for the Fluad or the Flucelvax, that is only good for 28 days after you first access that vaccine, if it's the multi-dose vaccine. So it's really important to make sure that staff are labeling it and dating it appropriately. And universally, the flu vaccines, there's very few exceptions, but really in general, the message is those will all expire June 30th. So as they prepare then for the next season's vaccine. And next slide, please. So with that, I actually have a couple polling questions I wanted to ask you guys. And then we have some Q&A and happy to open up the chat box too if anyone has any questions. But Mary, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the first polling. Perfect. How confident are you in your vaccine storage and handling practices? Looks like so far most people are good. Okay, we'll go ahead and close that question. Next question. I need to close that one, huh? Okay. Have you ever been cited for improper storage of your vaccinations? Lots of no's. That's really good to hear. Sounds like we have some great peer mentors on the line then that can share their best practices. All right. All right, we can end that one. And last polling question. Have you ever lost vaccine due to improper storage? That's great to hear too. Yeah, it just helped out a couple of facilities that unfortunately a delivery snuck in that didn't get put away. So that was definitely a learning moment, unfortunately. All right, we can go ahead and close those out. Thank you, Mary, for sharing those. And I guess, we have some common questions and answers up, but I know we're at time. So I thank you all for your attendance and your participation. And if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. I'll pass it back to you, Miranda.
Great. So we do have a question from Holly Simpson in the chat, and it says, I've been researching This is a way to reduce gaps in monitoring. I'd love to hear of a system that has been successfully implemented. So if anybody has any suggestions or systems that they feel is a great example, can you please send them to us, or possibly contact Holly if you know her. If not, feel free to send the information to us and we can pass it on to the group so everybody can benefit from that knowledge. And we did want to say thank you very much, Jessie, for participating. She does have a resource slide here that will go out with a lot of the information that she covered for us. And so just wanted to share that with you guys. And if you want to go ahead and advance to the end, Mary, we'll kind of, if there are any questions, definitely feel free to send them to us and we will address them next week at the beginning with questions and answers. And again, we want to thank everybody, and especially Jessie, for her presentation on her birthday today. But again, we want to thank everybody for participating, and we want to welcome everyone to join us next Wednesday on the 17th, where we'll be talking about a couple topics, one of them being staff competencies. So thank you again for joining us, and everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everybody. I do see a question in the chat from Joyce. So if you just want to forward that to me, and I can work with you guys and see if we can find any resources for her.
Perfect. We will do that for you. Joyce, we will get back to you on this. You have not been missed.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.